Welcome back to Property Panorama with me, Elspeth Pearce. Coming up next, we meet Alex Wiffen, who works in the genre of recruitment in the property industry.
Ever wondered what goes on behind the scenes in the property industry? Well, from construction to development, it's all about finding the right person for the job. With me now is Alex Wiffen from Cherry Pick People to explain how this is done. Alex, great to have you with us.
Pleasure to be here, thanks.
Now, I found a lot of industries seem to be suffering from a skills shortage. Would you say this is true for the property industry?
Definitely, 100%. It's been a really challenging few years to find quality people to come into the sector, and I know that's the case across many sectors, but definitely properties suffering that same shortage. And I think that's very much been because of the recession being so long, not many people coming into the sector, and then as you know, everyone gains confidence and everyone wants to expand, all the businesses want to grow, all of a sudden it's, you know, where do we need X amount of sales negotiators for our office, and you know, need someone with 2 years experience. The people aren't there because there was no one coming in for such a long period of time during the recession. So yeah, that's I believe to be the cause, and I know we've been out of recession for some time, but it's those people with 2 or 3 years experience that are in really high demand. And we're also seeing that the people coming in at the bottom is also becoming more challenging, because I suppose whilst we were in recession, there were fewer options away from property. And now, you know, graduates coming in at this much lower level of graduates coming into the sector. So it's incredibly challenging at the moment to find very good quality people. That
must also represent an opportunity for those wanting to get in the industry. So obviously the property industry is burgeoning. So where are the jobs most in demand? Well,
I mean, it's probably easy to say where there's been where it's been more challenging, you know, maybe where it's dropped off a bit, because it is across the sector, from administrators to directors. It's really challenging for the very reasons I talked about before. You can imagine that expansion, it causes problems across the whole sector. Probably it slowed down a bit in prime central London. With that, for the past year, that market has slowed, and therefore salespeople in that area has not been as high demand. And I suppose where it's been particularly challenging has been surveyors and valuation surveyors in particular, because again, that recession, but you know, it takes time for people to be qualified to go into the field, and a lot of people that were qualified during that time go off and find other careers, and therefore don't want to come back. So that's also particularly demanding to find good people in the valuation surveyor area.
And what would you say it takes to make it in this sector?
So it depends very much on the role you're going for. You know, if you're going for an administrative property management type of career, it's going to, you know, you're going to look to be good time management skills, well organised, good attention to detail. If you're going for a sales role, you need to be incredibly, you know, driven, motivated, with good people skills. So you know, it does vary what the sort of skills you need to be successful. I mean, obviously, to be successful in any field, you do need to have that drive, I suppose, regardless of the particular sector within property you're going into. But yeah, it does vary from job to job, obviously.
And would you recommend formal training, or perhaps more of an entrepreneurial approach where somebody could maybe do an internship or even sort of try and start their own company?
Well, I mean, again, that varies for the roles you're going for. If you're going down the surveyor route, you know, you need to be qualified. You have to go to university and other professional services related to that. You need to go down that route. There are some firms where you can start from the very bottom and they'll take you all the way through. But the vast majority, university education is paramount. If you're going into a sales role, probably you might even be better off not doing it at all. It can, you know, I've seen many people who go straight into a negotiator career at 19, and you know, when their friends are coming out of uni at 21, they're a manager, you know, earning 100k a year or something like that, you know, and so it can be to a distinct advantage not to go. Though having said that, most of our higher end clients do look for people with degrees. So you know, it can vary from role to role. With the sales roles, it's more about personality and what you can bring to the table, I suppose. So yeah, that's how I'd answer that.
Fantastic. Alex, thank you so much. That was Alex Wiffen there talking about the best way into the property industry.
Now, is it best to own a property personally in your own name, or is it best for a company you control to own your property? Let's find out from Nigel Taylor, who looked into this extensively.
Ever wondered about the advantages for property investors to build a portfolio through a limited company? Well, with me now is Nigel Taylor of notjusttax.co.uk to explain how to go about that. Well, Nigel, welcome to the Property Panorama studio.
Thank you.
So first off, what's the advantages of this tax structure?
Well, over the last 2 years, there's been some changes in tax, and therefore it's deemed now more tax advantageous to actually buy through a limited company rather than be a sole trader and buy to let properties going forward. Now, there's been 2 major changes recently. These have been the 3% additional stamp duty land tax that's been applied to any second properties, and the interest as well on borrowings going forward is not going to be tax deductible for the higher rate taxpayer come April 2017. So looking at that, and actually banks are now allowing limited companies to borrow for residential property, which are day one companies being set up. It makes it more advantage to actually buy through a limited company than buy through a personal position. Now, we always look at limited companies being the 3 main areas: risk, extra borrowing power, and tax efficiency going forward. So one of the 3 main areas, the tax area, if you have a sole trader, it's very difficult to be taxed any other way except for through income tax and capital gains tax.
So who can utilise this structure? Is it anybody, or just people who buy a house, or does it have to be a portfolio?
Oh, it can be anyone that's buying a second home. If they're buying a second home, they should really be buying it through a limited company going forward. If you have multiple shareholders, i.e. family shareholders, so you have an A shareholder, a B shareholder, and a C shareholder, they could be the wife, the husband, and the children. There are many advantages going forward to be more tax efficient and to actually build up that portfolio that you've got, rather than just be limited with the individual that's got multiple properties under his or her name. So there are many advantages. Another example with buying a property through a limited company, for example, you would have a life assurance policy, and that would be paid out of the company. It will protect your family as well, and it's tax deductible for the company and tax efficient for the individual, and there's no benefit in kind charge as well, whereas an individual would normally have his or her life assurance paid out of their taxed income. So there are those areas that are massively tax efficient for an individual going forward for a limited company.
And there are no moral issues here?
No, not at all. There are, everyone has a moral obligation to pay tax, and also a legal obligation too. So tax structures, limited companies are a very simple long-term investment plan, and corporation tax rates, for example, for the limited company are going down to 17% come 2020, which is lower than income tax rates. So you can see the longer term planning here, and even further tax planning is inheritance tax, where individuals can obviously reduce their inheritance tax liabilities through a limited company based on the amount of shares they offset with their children and other siblings going forward.
Well, it does sound complicated, so talk me through step by step how to go about this.
We have set up the company. We would create, instead of creating ordinary shares, we'd create something called alphabet shares, which is A share, a B share, and a C share. And we would talk to the client about whether they would like to have those types of shares available, and they all give different rights to different shareholders, which is again a lovely tax position to be in going forward. So every shareholder has a potential different right to receive a dividend in the future, or to receive a right to capital in the future as well. We set up the company for the individual. We deal with the loan with a bank like Aldermore Bank PLC, for example. And we apply for that mortgage on the client's behalf. The hard thing is to actually find the property, and that's the hardest thing. We can do our work and actually create that structure, but it's for the individual to go out there and find that property and get the right property at the right price, that's within their means going forward.
And there's no complications moving forwards in terms of perhaps inheritance tax, for example?
No, not really, because of the structure that we put in place is structured right for inheritance tax purposes because of the shares. Where there is an individual that has multiple properties under his or her name only, then there becomes an issue with inheritance tax, because it's that individual that is being taxed on their estate when they pass away in the future. So an individual that has multiple properties, there's a high risk to them because there's the high risk of inheritance tax going forward. Where there is a UK company structure, it's a much more efficient way to be involved in going forward. And it's all about the borrowing power as well. You're not restricted on your borrowing power through the limited company. You may be through your own personal means going forward because of underwriters' decisions based on your own personal liability and personal credit history as well going forward.
A good option for a second home then,
Absolutely,
definitely.
absolutely.
Nigel, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
That was Nigel J. Taylor there talking about how to buy property through a limited company.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today, but please join us next time for more news, views and top tips. From Jenny and from myself, have a great week and we'll see you next time.